Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Slate to Success Talk Show. My name is Rochelle Slate Queen Hemingway, CEO and founder of Slate to Success. I advise and empower women professionals, especially women veterans, to step up into their most authentic personal brand to gain and attract lucrative opportunities. And we are focusing on 4 different areas: appearance, behaviors, communication skills, and digital presence. And we all start with the word slay. Slay means to kill it, to dominate it, and to nail it, to be on point, to impress greatly, to dream big and work hard until you own it is also an acronym that stands for universal life and leadership philosophies that really resonate with me the most. And hopefully they resonate with you too. And that is stay ready to be ready, lead out loud, a sense of community, and knowing you are built to last. So as you come on in, tell us who you are, where you're streaming in from, so we can give you the shout out, because we would love for you to be part of this conversation. This is a special one, y'all. So for all the mothers and those that stand in the gap, if you will, as a mother, happy Mother's Day to you. And of course, we've got my sister, Yolanda King is in the building. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you very much, my sister, and thank you so much for tuning in. You know this one's going to be a special episode, and so I know you're here, and she is streaming in from Riviera Beach, Florida. Okay. All right. So sunny side of the world. And then we have R5 hauling and junk removal. Happy Mother's Day, Audra, to you. Thank you so much for being with us live tonight. This is going to be so good. It's going to be a great conversation. And the reason why I had this show or launched this show was to bring in men and women who are living life on their own terms and are using the slave philosophies to make a positive impact in the world. And I just didn't know, I needed my mother, who is here, to be on the show with us tonight. So go ahead and share with your friends, your family, your girlfriends, whoever that needs to be part of this show, because there are going to be a lot of gems that are dropped here tonight. Okay. You don't want to miss out on anything. And you want to see if mama's going to tell us some stories. Listen, that's why I'm here too. I want to know. Okay. Truth be told, we're going to find out some information, I'm sure, that we didn't know about. And this is going to be juicy. All right. So go ahead and get your cup of whatever. Now, I got water now because that's what I drink. But whatever you need to drink, that's on you. Okay. And so I'm going to leave that up to your own device. Okay. So let me just read a little bit about my mother. Okay. Now, she has an extensive background. All right. She is highly respected in the healthcare industry. She's an educator. She's a registered respiratory therapist with over 30 years of experience spanning clinical practice and higher education. She's a dedicated advocate for student development and professional excellence. She began her academic career in 2001 and as an adjunct professor at Ivy Tech Community College's Kokomo campus. There she led respiratory care lab instruction in partnership with the Lafayette campus through two-way video conferencing and early adoption of technology and education that set the tone for her forward-thinking teaching style. Now, her unwavering commitment to healthcare education has earned her the Hamilton County's President's Adjunct Award for Excellence. She is also a distinguished nominee for the Gerald I. Lamkin Award, which honors outstanding adjunct faculty who demonstrated exceptional achievement inside and outside the classroom. With every lesson, Deborah King is not just teaching, she's building stronger, more compassionate healthcare professionals for tomorrow. Now, my mom has been married to my dad, retired Master Sergeant and Deacon Fred King, the late Fred King, for over 50 years. They have 4 children, including moi. I am the oldest, and she has 5 grandchildren. So she finds joy in crafting, y'all. She spends time with the grandchildren. She is faithful to attend church. And so I've witnessed my mom firsthand on what true resiliency looks like. She has quiet strength. She has unwavering courage and grace through grief, shaped by the woman that I am here today. She is legacy. Okay. So it deserves to be heard. And I just wanted to share her with you all tonight. So I'm going to bring her to the stage. Hi,
Hi, how's everybody out there?
Mom. Oh my goodness. Listen, we have a whole bunch of people here, Mom. We got Leslie George, who is Madame. That's what she's affectionately called. She says Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, happy Mother's Day, Leslie.
And then we have Maritza, who is also a mother, and she says Happy Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to both of you.
Happy Mother's Day, Maritza.
So, okay. So all the things, all right. It's I don't even know where to stop. First of all, Mom, happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you.
And this was perfect because it's right on Mother's Day and having you here as the guest. So, first of all, how was your day? We'll start there first. We'll go with the soft questions first.
Oh, the soft questions. All right. Well, it is. I am here in Westville, Indiana. I don't know if you all know where that is. It's about 40 miles away from the capital of Indiana, which is Indianapolis. And so it is a nice, pretty sunny day today. So that was good. And I went to, I attended church at Second Missionary Baptist Church, where I have been going for the past 40 years. And that's in Kokomo, Indiana. And we had a good service today.
Oh,
Talking about
okay.
kind of mothers. Oh, yeah. And the choir was right on time. Everybody in tune.
Okay. And we know we love praise and worship. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm happy to hear that you had an amazing day. It's always good to know that your mom is having a great day, y'all. Okay, we've got some other comments here. Our 5 pound junk removal. Her name is Audra, but that's her business that she has underneath
Oh.
this. And she says, Happy Mother's Day, Mama King. Tell us some funny stories about Rochelle, please.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. And then Dominique. Hey, Dominique. She's here. Happy
Oh,
Mother's
Dominique
Day.
is there. Oh,
Yes. Dominique is the one of the grandchildren, y'all.
she's
She
the
is the
oldest.
oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for being here and showing up. And then of course Joyce is here. She says Happy Mother's Day, Auntie Love, Joyce, and merch.
Oh, so happy. I'm just so excited. Aw,
I
that's
am
so
too.
nice. Yes.
Okay. So you're from Garrett, Indiana. And of course, we've been there. And this was, y'all, like you blink and you missed it. Okay. That's how small this town was. It was like what? How many people? 400 people?
Oh, now give us a little bit more credit than that. There was 4,000 of us.
Oh,
There's
okay.
4,000 of
4,000.
us. Hmm.
Yeah. So tell us how growing up in Garrett was.
It was a challenge. It really was a
Mm.
challenge for to grow up in such a small town, and then and I live right next door to my grandma. So my grandparents lived there, and they had children younger than us. So I had an uncle younger than us, younger than me, and we'd always pick on him because he said his name was Douglas, and he thought we were supposed to call him Uncle Douglas, and that never went through. And so you pick on it. Then my cousins came from Detroit and lived with my grandparents. And so it was like everybody's Andrews. There was like 30 Andrews. And we all went to school in the same little school.
Mm.
And we had cousins that lived there too. But the railroad came in, and most of my cousins left and went to Ohio for the railroad. But no, the Andrews had to stay there, and we stayed. Now my
Wow.
grandma was pretty. She was from Alabama,
Mm.
and Newton, Alabama, and she lived there most of her life until she came. And the railroad brought them from Alabama to Garrett. Her, my grandfather. Now, she would like to sit in the window. There was a big picture window, and she sat in that window, and she could track us all. She could
Oh.
see us coming and going. So there was no way getting past grandma. you know. She can, we walked it, we had to walk past her house to get to school, or we had to drive by it, and she would know what time we came in, and if we were late, then she could walk up and see and want to know why it is. So she was like another mom because she was watching all of us, and she had 6 kids of her own that was at the house.
Mm,
Hmm.
wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is like kind of like the privacy, not even privacy, but just be having people always looking after you. But at the same time, it was kind of good because you did have some folks that were looking
Hmm.
out for you, right?
Right,
So,
of course.
and then there's a comment here. Um, they say the Great Migration, was that part of, you said they moved from Alabama to Indiana. Was that part of the Great Migration?
They were trying to get more people to work on the railroad, but back then and there, like most of the railroads, because they were like some of my cousins were they did work they weren't shoveling snow or anything like that, but they were like the butlers or the people that doing the laundry and things like that. And so that's how they did work on that railroad there. They brought them up. It was better paid than it was in Alabama, but so they all kind of came up there, and the railroad was a big part of Garrett. I grew up in Garrett, Indiana. It was a big part of it, and it was the main source of income. And
Mm,
so that's why so many people, but like I said, we were the only blacks in Garrett.
yeah,
Most of the town was predominantly white, but the ones of us that came up there worked on the railroad. Hmm.
yeah. And so, fast forward just a little bit, and you worked as a candy striper
Hmm.
at the local hospital,
Hmm.
and then you also worked for your grandma
Hmm.
and it was like a bed and breakfast.
Mhm. My maternal grandmother, so the grandmother sitting looking out the window was my father's, my father's mom. My mother, she was it's a different than night and day because she was from Chicago. So it was a different from night and day. And so
Mm,
they lived in Warsaw, Indiana. And she came up, my grandmother came from Tennessee to be a nanny. She was a nanny to a couple that owned the foundry in there, and then she's got her business. And I think, maybe I got some of and even you, Rochelle, I think we got some of our traits from my grandmother because she was a go-getter. So she came as a nanny, and then she ended up buying rental houses, and she had her own house. She did not live in the city. She built a nice house out in the country. She ran a day camp
mm.
in one of the cities, and then she opened up her own delicatessen. And that's how I learned how to work with food because she would have me make some of the dishes for her. Hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I do think that we do have that in our blood, with doing things that we create, and just putting the work in and seeing where that comes. And I have seen over the years. So y'all, we're 20 years apart.
Exactly.
So
Mhm.
exactly 20 years apart.
Mhm.
So, I have seen as I've grown up that there's a lot of things between you and dad that, I have done in my life. And now I can say, oh, that's probably where I got it from.
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily from my military career. I had already had it in there. So you worked as a candy striper,
Mhm.
and tell us the first time that you met dad.
Well, so Fred Douglass, as he came up. So I was working as a candy striper, and of course, I had a set curfew. So there was no it was 5 miles away from the house. It was another little town I drove to. And I had to drive my dad's car. So there was no goofing around. Once I got off a shift, I had to get that car back home,
Mm,
right? So here comes this guy from, and I don't know where he came from. He came up and parked right beside me in the car, and I'm like looking around, and I thought, where'd he come from? And I could not understand I'm not making this up, y'all. I could not understand anything that he said. He had this strong southern accent. and he he just said, I don't know if he said, "What is your name?" or anything, but I told I got to get home. But he kept talking and talking, and the next thing I know, he had jumped on a motorcycle now and followed me to my house. Follow me to
What?
my house. Follow me to my house. And he said, of course, there's grandma sitting at the window. And they all came up. So they all came out of the house. And then here comes my brothers and sisters out of the house. And like it was like little ragamuffins coming out of the house.
He said ragamuffins.
Coming out of the house. And we're sitting on the porch and they're looking at, where'd you find him at? And my dad said, and he says, he followed me home from the hospital. And my dad said, was he a patient? I said, no, he just followed me home from the. And so my grandma, she calmed everybody down. And she asked him what he was. And he was so polite. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. And all that. And they just kind of just bonded with him.
Really?
Yeah. And they said, well, I'll be back. Well, I didn't even pay any attention to it. He came back. He came back because he knew where I lived.
Wow. See, some people would call that stalking. You know what I mean? So, like, y'all, our dad he's a big, bold personality. And so I could just imagine him seeing you and going, oh, yeah, that's who I want to talk to. So, you guess he keeps coming up, he keeps coming. And then, you end up getting married, but you were separated, or you got married after he came back from Vietnam, right?
Mm-hmm. So he met me, I was only 17 when I met your dad, and he was already in the service. And I think that was the problem that my dad had, or your grandfather had, because he was older. It was only 3 years, but 17 and 20, there's a big age gap in that. So I hadn't graduated from high school yet, but he went to Vietnam. He was inducted into the service in 68. He went into the service and he was drafted to Vietnam. He tried to get out of Vietnam. He was the Army wanted him, but he did something to get into the Air Force, him and Uncle Frank. I don't know how they got in there. And Uncle Frank is his cousin, which they grew up like brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they followed each other in the Air Force. He went to Vietnam when I was in a senior in high school. He said I will see you. I'll be back in 13 months. He did come back in 13 months. He called me at the airport, Bearfield Airport from Fort Wayne. He called me there and he was talking to me, and all I was doing was crying. And I said, "Who is?" And he says, "I am here." He stopped before he even went to see his parents.
What?
He stopped to see me before he went to parents. And then after that, he proposed.
Wow.
But he said he was coming back and he wanted to make sure he got back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There, y'all, it is. This is just, listen, I'm just hearing details too. So I'm just wowed as much as everybody else is. Right. So we've got Veronica who's here. Thank you so much, Veronica, for being here. Happy Mother's Day to you too. We also have Chevy is in the building. And she says, wow. And it's always great to have family members who aspire us. And this is when we were talking about the bed and breakfast, delicatessen, having the entrepreneurial spirit. Then we have Aunt Joanne is in the building.
Oh,
She says
hi!
happy Mother's Day to her oldest sister. So happy Mother's Day to you too, Aunt Joanne. And thank you so much for being on the show live with us tonight. That's sweet. And then Leslie says, what a great romantic story. And she says, wow. Wow. And even Yolanda said, wow, nice story, Mom. Okay. We should have had done this before, but this is good. This is really good. We're finding out more information. And Glenroy, who's always here, with us on the show, he says, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers online. Mrs. King, you raised an amazing daughter. She was my first sergeant when I got to Nellis Air Force Base. She always exhibited kindness, poise under pressure, and a high degree of respect for all the people around her, no matter their rank. I have always thought of her as being a big sister or auntie role since meeting her. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, where are the
Oh.
tissues at? Where are the tissues? But this is going to be a tearjerker. Glenroy, thank you so much for saying that. I mean, oh my goodness. And Chevy says, I'm loving hearing your mom's story. Latrice is in the building. Hi, Latrice. Happy Mother's Day to you too. And Veronica says, yes, a great story. So, okay. So, this is story time. So, I'm all about it. Um, so after you get married, or you to get married, you had to fly over to England by yourself.
I was 19 when we got married and had to fly to England all by myself. Now, let me tell you, folks, this is a scary thing for someone 19 who grew up in that little bitty town of Garrett. And I don't know if Joanne remembers any of this because Joanne was only like maybe 12 or 13, my sister, when I left. I did before I went to IU, Indiana University. I did go there for a year, and then before I flew there. So we got the ticket. So Shug came home. I always called him Shug, guys. So Shug came home from England, and we got married June 5th of 1971. And then he went back. So he was only there for a week. Flew home, we got married, and went back. I had never been on an airplane, never been any place by myself. And so I had to fly in from Bearfield, Fort Wayne to JFK in Chicago and stay there the whole night.
Oh,
Yeah, so I had to stay there the whole night. And I had um I had some change in my purse, and I kept putting coin purses. So we had the phones for the coin things. You had to put phone. So I used, I don't know how many coins I've been there calling back and making sure that people knew that I had made it to JFK. From JFK, I flew, I believe it was 16 hours in that plane.
mm,
And finally, and went into Heathrow in London. And the Heathrow in London, um, I got off the plane, and there was your dad. He was sitting there. He had this green suit on, and he was sitting there and waiting for me. And then he whispered in my ear, I have to go to work. So he went to work. So I flew in there. He was on a split shift, two 12s. I think it's 24 hours
mm-hmm.
they worked, and then he would be off 2 days. Well,
Yep.
he was on the rotation where he was gone for 2 full days. And then I didn't get to see him. He came back to the house. He took me to the house, and he left, put his uniform on, went back to work. And I didn't see him for 2 more days because he was on that rotation. Um, I didn't really know what the Air Force was like. People say, you know, did I sign up for this? I guess I did, because that was the way it was over in England. Was he refueled the aircraft. So he's in liquid oxygen, he refueled the aircraft. And so he was just gone all the time. And I mean, this rotation was the whole 2 days. Didn't come home.
Wow.
Didn't come home. And I was living out in a little village in England. So I think that's how I learned how to cope of being by myself, because here I was in a different country, you know, by myself.
Yeah. You know, that's true. And I really didn't think about that until just now. Like, you were there by yourself for many days on end, and having to come up with how to entertain yourself,
Hmm.
how to like live by yourself. And it's almost in a way like when we, like leave, because when I left, I had to learn how to live on myself too.
Mm-hmm.
but it was different because I had people around. Like when you're a military spouse, it's different because you have to make friends, and sometimes you don't make friends easily because of the way that the military is designed and set up, especially if you live in a village and you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a car. I'm sure that you
No,
only had
no,
one
no
car,
car. Mm-mm. Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's a lot. So man, okay, first of all, Uncle Theotis and Aunt Karen are here. Okay,
Oh,
so it was a happy Mother's Day, Sister Karen. So
hi. Aw.
I'm so glad that y'all are here.
Uh-huh.
So happy Mother's Day, Aunt Karen. And I hope that you're doing well. We'll see you in about a month or so, okay? Because we'll
Mm-hmm.
see them in July. And
Yes.
then, so Leslie says, it is so special to capture this in the format as this is a legacy. I see where you get your energy and confidence. This is the best live to date.
But I want to put a shout out for my granddaughter who is living by herself too in Washington State. So Dominique, I am so proud of you because I know what it's like to leave your family. She's only 23, so to leave her family and be on her own. I and you know Dominique, I have to tell you about my granddaughter. She calls me every day.
Every day,
Every day,
every day.
checking on Nana.
That's right. You
Mhm.
know, and I think that is so special too, because there's got to be one. There's got to be one, and she is taking on that role. She's really like mindful at her age, and yet and still she's being responsible and being on her own. And we all excited about her. I'm
Mhm.
like, that
Mhm.
is so but it speaks to how she has, taken things in, and how, there's several of us that kind of just went and did our own thing. And so she's finding her own path. And, that's what it's about. That's what it's
Mhm.
about.
Mhm.
And Leslie
Uh,
says
mhm.
you remember the color of the suit too, of dad's suit. Go ahead.
Oh, and I think I see that in all my girls because Yolanda lived by herself in Indianapolis, Noblesville for 20 some years, and now my daughter Athena, she's raising three two girls by herself
Mm-hmm.
in Kokomo, and so I have strong girls, and so I think they have learned how to take care of themselves and be independent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Okay, so first of all, Glenroy, Glenroy says not much has changed for military spouses in terms of learning the military system. To tell people about our on base resources, but to hear the real story told in such a gracious way is amazing. This should be an ongoing segment. It's so relevant. Yeah. So we're going to get back to that, Glenroy, because I think that is important as we were talking through like the chronological journey that my mom has taken. So, you had me at the age of 20, then you had Yolanda at the
At
age of
22,
22, then you had Athena,
at 24.
24, and then here comes Max 8
Mhm.
years later,
Mhm.
and that when he, so that was like 32. So in
Mhm.
between 20 and 32, you're raising children.
Mhm.
And when you talk about the independent, I think we were all raised, I thought for sure, like dad wanted me to be the boy. I was always like up underneath his thumb on all the things. I was outside, I was doing all the manual labor, I was also doing inside, I was responsible for all the things. So it was almost a natural kind of a way when I went into the military on how I was able to do what I was doing in there. But I also know that it was probably scary for you, for me to be in the military.
It was, and while I'm having these children, I still went to school. I
Yeah.
mean, I still was going to school. My goal was to be a doctor. And I think everybody already knew that. I wanted to be a doctor.
Yep.
You know, I got close being respiratory therapist. I got, you know, kind of got close, but I was still taking classes. I took classes in England. I took classes in we were stationed in England. I walked to the base with my children, with you guys. We walked up that hill in Lodgesville, Azores, and I took classes. And so I kept taking classes along with that. And your question was about being scared. Is that what you said? Being scared?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, well, I'm looking now because I have a son now. It was different before I had AJ. So
Mm-hmm.
after I had AJ, it's like, where is he going to go? What is he going to do? Is he going to be okay by himself? All these things are now starting to come to my mind. So I
Mm-hmm.
can only imagine, like, as I left, Yolanda, she moved out, Athena moved out. Like, how was that for you? Because these are transitions. You know what I mean? So was any of these transitions difficult?
Well, I think the first one was you leaving, you know, because you were the oldest. And so and I just want to tell the story about this, y'all, for her. So Rochelle was in IU. She was IUK in Kokomo, and she wanted to be an occupational therapist. Why she chose that is beyond me, because I think she just picked something, you know, because she wasn't the type that she would, you know, you have to, you know, make people get back to their normal state. And I just didn't see her doing that. I didn't see her, you know, trying to help them wash do a skill or wash their dishes or learn how to set the table because they had a stroke or impairment. I really didn't see her doing that at all. I just think she just wanted to take something. So she comes up. I was getting ready for work. All through my career, the girls and Max all knew that I kept working, but I worked the second shift, so was working midnight shift, and so she came up there. She was getting ready to go, and I was trying to get ready for work, and she says, "Well, Mom, what do you think about me going into the army?" So it was the army first, of the reserves. She was going to go in the army reserves with her best friend April, and who's the one that got her in trouble sometimes, you know. And so but April turned out to be, she's a good girl. But
Mhm.
anyways, she says, "So I'm going into the army." And I says, "Army?" I said, I don't know how your dad's gonna feel about the army."
Well, you were gonna go in the army
Yeah,
too. You
I
wanted
was.
to go.
I was going to be I actually took the test, the ASVAB test, to go in the army. But at that age, I was 18, and back in that day, you had to have your dad's permission, your parents' permission. And my dad said no. I was not going into army. I think Karen and Joanne remembers that. He said no. And so I said, "Okay." And so she went in there, then she turned around, and April somehow backed out of the reserves. So here comes Rochelle. Now she flips to the Air Force. And I said, "Okay." So I didn't really think she knew what she wanted to do. I think she wanted to leave Kokomo. I think
Yes.
that was the main thing. That
Yes.
she wanted to leave Kokomo. Now Kokomo was 10 times bigger than Garrett. But I don't think that she didn't have what she wanted to do in her lifestyle and her ambition. She wasn't going to get it in Kokomo. So I think she just wanted to leave. And I understood that. I understood
Oh.
leaving Garrett. I knew I left Garrett, and you know, and I really didn't have any regrets leaving Garrett. I really didn't. The only thing that I do regret is I wasn't there for when my mom died. And
Mm.
I, you know, and I always think about that. Maybe, you know, maybe things would have been better if I was there. Maybe things turned out, but for you to, my mom died when I was n- when I got over to, we went to England, then we went to Denver. So I was only I think when I was 20 when my mom died, and she died from a tragic burn. She was in a fire, and I think that affected our whole family. So,
Mm.
and I always, so happy Mother's Day to my mom in heavens. But I just felt so bad that I wasn't there with her, and to be able to be a part of my brothers and sisters, because I missed a lot in the Air
Mm.
Force because I wasn't there for them. And so we all had to grieve differently. They were still in
Mm.
high school. Karen and Joanne, they were still in high school. So but they've turned out to be some of the strongest women that I know. And to this, because they just went on their own doing that. They did come and live with Fred and I. My They came and lived with for a little bit, but I admire their strength that
Mm.
they got through this, and we all got through, of my mom. And my
Yeah.
dad never remarried, and so kudos to him too, because I that was a handful to have your wife die at a young age, because they were only in their 40s, and then
Mm.
to continue to move on. So
Yeah.
when you left, it was, like I said, I would, and then Yolanda was always on the move. She always had like 50 jobs, She, she'd be doing this and she'd be doing that, and and she should be saving her money. And so when she left, I said, "Oh, okay." It got a little bit easier, but she moved to Indianapolis, which is a kind of like a lot of crime there, and she had several apartments that she moved in, and
Yeah,
then
she sure
she
did.
and we moved every one of them, and then when I got to Theta, and you know Theta stayed in Kokomo, so it was a
Mm.
little bit easier with her because she was still there.
Yeah.
And so and like I said, she's single mom raising those two strong girls, and she does a very good job.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, I figure that, when we are going through transition, especially when you've seen a lot in your lifetime and you've worked a lot. I remember in high school, you work in night shifts, and you would still get up and come to all of our events. And it was just like, wow, it was incredible to see that you were still kind of like being present and showing up even though I knew you were tired. I knew that there was a lot of things that you had to do. You were still making it happen, going to church, and y'all, we'd be in church all day. Okay. And it was just like, okay, we're going to church, but it was still that constant, you were still doing. And so I know that it was stressful. I know that it was chaotic. I know it was hard, especially being in the military, as a military spouse, and trying to fill that role too. And we've got like Glenroy. Okay, no, no, no. So Jonathan's here. Jonathan says, "Happy Mother's Day to all the amazing
Oh,
women in the King family and to all the ladies on the live. I pray that God continues to strengthen each and every one of you as you continue to blaze pathways on this road we call life." Yes, thank
oh,
you,
thank you,
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Love that. And
Mhm.
Glenroy said it's called the charge of the firstborn when I was saying I was the oldest. That's what happens, I guess, when you're first born. And love a lifetime learner as you're still learning. You're still teaching, Ma.
Mhm.
And so Glenroy said, or Leslie says, Glenroy agree. I was going to say the first one is the experiment.
Well, you're right. I didn't really know what I was doing. I got
That
these
may
babies
explain a
over
lot
here.
of things that I do now. I'm like, I don't know. Like,
You're raising kids with no family around you. So, you were born in England, and then Yolanda was born in Kokomo and still didn't have any people around there. Thea was born in North Carolina and still no family around there. And, Max is overseas. So, it was, I think everyone was an experiment.
yeah, I think that a lot of what we have learned, it was practical though. It was practical sense. Like we knew practicality. We have a lot of skills that we have, that we still use today. And, the tenacity and the determination, I think, is one of those things that we continue to do. And then, you talked a little bit about, being overseas, coming back, being overseas, coming back. And then, deciding, how did y'all decide to stay in Kokomo, Indiana? Like, I want to know this story because I was like, why are we here? Why are we
Well,
staying here?
actually, the orders were for Mississippi.
Oh,
Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi. I
oh, I
believe
didn't
that's
know
I
that.
did. Yeah, that's where we're supposed to go. Your dad said, I am not going there. And I said, do you have a say? And he said, I'm not going there. So he switched from the liquid oxygen to being a recruiter. Now the recruiter was not easy for him because they said he had too many children.
Oh,
So he said, somebody with four children, and then because he would be gone a lot, and they actually wanted him to live separately. So it's either that, so he had to choose between Right Pat or Kokomo.
and Right Pat is in Ohio,
Right
y'all.
Pat's in Ohio. So he actually thought, well, let's get back to Indiana. So because remember, I'm overseas all this time and flitting around all these bases and not being near my family at all. Karen and Joanne are out there, and they're having families and things like that too. So he wanted to get a little bit, maybe a little bit closer, because we did spend 6 years in North Carolina. So he was around his family for 6 years. So we thought, well, maybe we need to just get out to Indiana so you can be a little bit closer to your family. Um, so we went there, and as a recruiter, and when we first got there, they wanted him to switch and go to South Bend. Now, South Bend is about 115 miles, I think, from Kokomo. And
Hmm.
so they wanted him to go up there, recruit there, and stay up there for in a hotel or something, a room or something. I don't know what the Air Force had planned for him. I can't remember. And then for us to stay in Kokomo, and he says no. I'm not. He said no. So that's how we got to recruiting, and he was the recruiting officer in Kokomo for, I believe, 6 years
Hmm.
until you went into the service
Yeah,
in 1990.
yeah. But then you all decided to stay there.
We stayed there because you had switched from schools. We were Plattsburgh, and then I think you went to Mechanical High School in Indiana, and then you came from Peru, New York, and then we came to Indiana, and we didn't want to move you again. And so
Mm.
he did have orders to go to Chicago. Remember that Chicago trip?
Yeah, we took that trip.
We
Yep.
went to trip. We had to Chicago to work up in the federal building in the Air Force up there, and the traffic was so bad that he says, I can't do this. I can't do this. And
Mm.
so and that's why we didn't get it. And then I would have to drive from where we were at back into Chicago to work at the hospital in Chicago, and leave you kids by yourselves, and didn't want to do that
Wow.
because I always had worked night shift. So because he was there during the day. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean,
Hmm.
everybody's got to have a place to be from. Everybody's from a place. So that's where we ended up from. And Veronica says she's very familiar with both AORs, which is areas of responsibilities, because she was also a recruiter and she's still serving
Oh.
in the Air Force. So, yeah, she understands that that grind, which
Hmm.
it is, so with all this being said, so this is the first part. So if for all those that are listening in, thank you so much for being here with us live. And this is my mom, okay, Deborah King. Well, Deborah King. Okay,
Hmm.
I'm pronouncing that wrong. Okay, and we're gonna get to that in a minute because that's another story that I need to know why there's been a change. But anywho, we have been talking through the past, 45 minutes on kind of like the first chunk of life, the growing up, having children, being a military spouse for over 23 3 years. And then, now, this whole that journey, we'll just go through that journey. What are the lessons that you learned through that journey?
Through military life.
Military life, raising children, going to school,
Mhm.
all the things.
Well, I I learned in military life the one thing that your dad always said, that the Air Force said if they wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you one. Um, it was a struggle. It was really a struggle having being in the Air Force and moving as much as we did and having 4 children. Um, we a lot of times we get to the base and the house wasn't big enough, and so we'd have to wait. I think we waited maybe, I think it was 3 months when we waited when we got to New York. Do you remember that, Rochelle? We
Yeah, I
waited
remember that.
because they didn't have they wanted to cramp us up in a 2 bedroom. Well, there's no way 6 of us could live in a 2 bedroom, and so
Nope.
we had to wait to get into that, and that was hard with all our stuff that we had brought and trying to live in this little room. I forget what those quarters are called now. Where we
The-
stayed was a BLB
Well,
something.
it's BAQ. It's like, like lodging. That's what they
Yes,
call it now.
yes.
Lodging.
And they kept moving us. They moved us one time to something was bigger. Then somebody. I always called them bigwigs. That came in and they made us move back out because we were in NCOs, and so they made us move out and things like that. So we finally got that, and then staying off of base. When we went to the Azores, we stayed off of base, and that was rough to stay off of base away. We couldn't get on there with no car. It took 6 months for our car to get um, from McGuire, New Jersey to Portugal. Don't understand, never did understand why it took so long. And we walked that whole thing. We walked up to the base. Your dad walked to work, came back down. We walked every day up to base to get clothes for the things like that. We flew in when they get a shipment into the base. We made sure we got up there and got things for you guys. And so it wasn't always, people think that living in the military is nice because you're going to all these places, but you know when you have children and your spouses has a job that takes him away all the time. um your dad went TDY a lot, and I know that one time we packed up. We almost had to move without him because
Mm-hmm.
he was gone. We went overseas, and we were going to have to stay on Seymour Johnson because they didn't have a house for us, and we got one at the last minute. And then your sister cuts up because she didn't want to get her injections. She had to get her shots, and she said she wasn't doing anything, Yolanda. And so
Mm-hmm.
and that was rough because we had to have all these immunizations just to get overseas. But we did meet some people, and I still have some people today that I still call my sisters, that we met with. But it was it was I think everybody. I know your dad always said everybody should go in the Air Force. I don't agree with that, but I think that some of the trials that we had I had going through the Air Force and has helped me now in my later age,
Mm.
to cope with some of the things that I'm going through now.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't experienced some of those things in the Air Force, I don't know if I could have survived right now.
Mm. You know what? That is such a profound thought because it's true. I think it's when you have had to kind of deal with unfavorable circumstances. Like most people, when they think about being in the military, again, they think it's a dreamy kind of world, but there's a lot of ins and outs that go of being in service. And I think it affects more so the family than it does the actual person that's serving because you're having to figure out what to do next, how to prepare, what's going to happen when you get to that base. A lot of times you got to switch jobs. You may have like a job beforehand that doesn't translate when you get to the next place. So there are a lot of things that, people don't really think through of being, a spouse or a dependent of a military family. But it did teach us a lot. It taught
Mhm.
us how to be resourceful. It
Mhm.
taught us how to connect to people and to learn friends. I mean, I had a hard time at some of the bases with having friends, but now I don't have a problem with, meeting people,
Mhm.
because I've had to do it so much when I was in military. So Veronica has some very um, good comments here. So she's like, being a recruiter is a grind because that's what she was. She says, thank you, Mom, for your service and support as well. And when you said if the military wanted to give you a family, they would give it to you, she said, yep, they say that. And she said, shaking my head. Um, no, this was so my dad was a recruiter in Kokomo, Indiana. And so he was stationed at Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York. And, that was kind of the last stop before we went to Indiana, right? So he was
Right.
in
Mhm.
Plattsburgh and then we went to Indiana. So yeah, so it's a whole thing, So I've had an ID card since I was born. And so,
Mhm.
I have it for the rest of my life. But that's just the lifestyle that I grew up in. So, that let's talk a little bit about the transition after Dad passed away. So, you know, for many of us that we know when we get to a certain age, we kind of see how life happens. There's always a sunrise and there's always a sunset. That's just the life cycle. And it's been 4 years. I can't
I
believe it.
know. I
4
know.
years.
Yes. Mhm.
So in 4 years though, a lot of things have changed. Some good, some bad, and some a little bit indifferent. And I remember the early days when I was flying back and forth, and kind of, you know, helping, assisting, supporting however I could. Um, and so the big house. So we lived in this house, y'all.
Yeah. Woo.
Okay, so my dad was a jack of all trades and really a
Mhm.
master of none. Okay. He could work and fix on all the things, but you know, as the house got a little bit older, things were starting to like being patched up that needed help. So when it came time for, to make a decision on to downsize, what was going through your mind at that point?
Well, at first I didn't think I could do it. I really didn't think I could do it. You came and after, of course, I don't know how many Rochelle shared with you. My Shug, my husband, like I said, I called him. He had a massive heart attack in the airport coming back from in Fayetteville, North Carolina, um, coming back home. Um, After we all told him not to go, but he had to go. He just had to go. So he came back, and then Rochelle flew home. Rochelle and Yolanda all flew in. Rochelle actually stayed. He died in October 25th. She stayed until after Thanksgiving. She didn't go back home. She stayed. Um, my sister Karen was such a support to me. She drove up, brought all of her family, and I'm telling you, I don't know how much we got rid of.
Mm,
The house was 2,500 square feet. Plus, he had built another garage beside it, and it looked like a house. Because people always thought that was another house over there. And it was full of stuff. And it had an apartment upstairs, so it was so the whole thing together had like 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, all of this. And I didn't know how I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to take care of it. I said I'd give it a year.
Mm-hmm.
So Karen brought all of her kids up, and she came over, and Dominique was over there helping, and we got rid of all the stuff. Dominique, Athena came, and Max. We got rid of most of the stuff that was in the house. That took a whole year to get
Yeah.
rid. That took a whole year, guys, just to even touch some of the stuff that was in that house. Because we lived in that house for 38 years. So we had all, and when we were going through it, he had saved every uniform from the, when we got married, he had two little stripes on his arm. He had saved every single uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Even his boots were there.
Mm-hmm.
He had all of his badges, all that he wore, different hats that he did. There's boxes, and I still have boxes of medals and honors that he got. And he worked at Delphi. He was an engineer working at Delphi. He had a box of all those things too. So he had, and tools. He had all kind of tools. There was a Corvette in the garage. There was boats. There was all kind of lawnmowers and things like that. But it took a year to get those there. Then this is what happened that really said that I need to get out of here. I was trying to go to work. I was still working, and it was cold that day, and the furnace went out.
Mm.
The furnace went out to the main house. It went out. It was cold in there, and so I was calling, trying to get that furnace back on because I didn't want the pipes to freeze. So I called them, and they got it freeze, and then I called Athena, and she came over there and sat with it so I could go to work, so I wouldn't be late for work. After that, that was the furnace in the main house. Then the furnace in the garage went out. And so I had to get that because those pipes were frozen there. Then I had to put three garage doors on because we couldn't lift them up. The springs had broken and we couldn't lift the garage doors up. And so I put three garage doors up on that. And then we had to finish a bathroom because all the stuff was out in the garage. And we
Mm-hmm.
brought it in, we finished the garage. And I says, I can't do this. I can't do anymore. I was patching everything, trying to put things together. Little Dominique would come over and try to help me with the grass. I mean, it was a lot of grass to cut. And then there was snow to shovel out. I had to shovel out snow. Now, I left for work in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. I didn't get off work till 5 o'clock in the morning. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm driving back home trying to shovel this pathway, and it was a circle garage, the circle cement. So
Mm-hmm.
it circled up from the one house out to the garage and trying to circle that just to get into the driveway to get there. And I said, I can't do this anymore. So I said, I gave it a year, and I says, I'm just going to move.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know everybody wasn't happy that I moved, but I had to downsize. And then that was the hard part. What do I take? I have
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff that we've had for 50 years of marriage. What do I take, and what goes? And Rochelle said, "Look at it, Mom. Throw it away. look, look, throw it away. Look, throw it away." She said, "You can't move everything. You can't move everything."
Y'all, I was like, listen, my mom is being very nice about the stuff, but I'm telling you, it was like Sanford and Son up in there. Okay. It was a lot of things. And I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with all of the things that we accumulated. I mean, because it was some of our stuff, like as kids, it was some of dad's stuff, some of your stuff, and it was some family members that had passed away. There was stuff in there that dad kept, for many years. So when you see these types of things, you don't know what to do. And so it did. It took us it took us probably like 2 years to really, because we put some stuff in storage,
Hmm.
and so we had to do a little bit at a time to kind of like go through it. But you can't go through every piece of paper now. You can't go through every box. I was like, this stuff right here, it's got to go. And so, me being who I am, I mean, you have to have different personalities. Yolanda is more sensitive. She's more sensitive. Athena's kind of like, she's in between sensitive and, a little bit firm, on things. Max is kind of nonchalant about, a lot of things. Now I'm straight up like this. Like, this has got to go. We're not doing that anymore. But as you have transitioned, you found a community that you're now a part of. And I have seen you in your zone. This element of like having your home with the things that, like I see the picture that you and dad got
Now, let me tell
behind
the
you.
people about this picture. So this
Yeah.
picture, um, my husband brought. He went to Spain. He can't carry that home from Spain. And so, and I don't know where he got the money from, because when we first got in the Air Force, I didn't tell you this story. When we first got in, he was in Vietnam. They overpaid him in Vietnam. So what the Air Force does, if they overpay you, they just don't pay you. So we didn't get paid for a whole year. He worked as
Okay.
a
I didn't know it was a whole
Yeah, it
year.
was a whole year. It was a whole year. A
Wow.
whole year, and he worked as a bartender, and then I worked at a daycare center, but he brought that picture home. So,
Mm,
yeah, so I tried to kept some of the things that, you have to. And Rochelle said when she came here, it's that first time she came in, she said, "Boy, it's cozy in here," because I wanted to some of the things that we had spent our time when we were trying to scrape our pennies together to keep together and to have, and I still wanted to see those.
yeah. I think that, you did such an incredible um just transferring from one place, which was our house really that we lived in, to a smaller home, and being able to do that on your own. And I was nervous. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. I was like, I don't see her making it past a year at this new community. I don't know if she'll like it. I don't know if she'll like, be a part of the community, because we were in Kokomo. I'm just be honest. Like, you didn't want any of the neighbors and all this other stuff because you were working and doing your thing. And so you were like, I don't never mind all this stuff here. So I didn't know how you would adjust. And even though, it was very sudden, it was very like, wow, what do I do next? I'm so proud of you, Mom.
Oh, thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
proud of you because you decided, hey, I want to go ahead and live the rest of my life and do things in your own way. Okay, so we have someone, you have Donnell. Donnell says, Happy Mother's Day. He just came on in here. And then we had Veronica says she knows Plattsburgh as well. She was stationed in Syracuse, New York. She's reminiscing on her recruiting journey through your mom's Air Force story. She loves hearing your stories, Mom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
um, so okay, so let's talk about this transition, because I know some of us, that listen into the show um, may, lose a partner, or may, have a big transition like you have had. So tell us what you would share with them would be helpful as they go through the journey.
Well, first of all, don't let people stop you. Don't let what people say stop you or influence your life. I had a lot of people say, "Oh, why are you going down there? Why are you moving 40 miles from your kids?" Well, my kids are grown and they all drive. And so, And when Dominique's home, she comes to sees me. Athena, because down here in Westville, she comes to Westville every day to bring one of my granddaughters to school. So it's not like we can't drive, and I can still drive, and I can drive up to Kokomo. So um I chose Westfield because first of all, it was to help with my grandchildren who go to school here. And so I was able to be here if they needed to get out of school early or if they needed to go someplace. I was here for them because I was making that trip from Kokomo
Mm-hmm.
to Westville.
Mm-hmm.
And and we were all doing it. You know, Fred was doing it. You helped. Yolanda helped. We all helped. Transporting the kids back and forth down here. Also, there was more opportunities for me here. There's I do crafts and I like to do crafts. I got another teaching job here, which they've asked me to actually take over the department, and I'm still thinking about that so I can move up to be a program chair. Um, I'm still going to work. I need that. Teaching is good for me because I'm teaching the future. So if somebody comes in the hospital looking over me and I see them doing something, I want to say, yes, well done, because I was part of your education.
Mm-hmm.
Because healthcare is important nowadays. And young people need people that are older, like I am, to help them guide them through things because a lot of people don't want to mess with them,
Mm-mm.
or they say that they don't have anybody to believe in them. When I went to IU Bloomington, one of the advisors said that I would never make it because I graduated from such a small school in Garrett. And so
Mm.
she said I would never make it. I wish, you know, I'm sure she maybe is watching from heaven now because I have made it.
Yeah.
So I don't want my students and the students that don't catch on quickly, I work with them because everybody learns at a different speed. And
Mm-hmm.
so I like to share some of my experience. I'm a hands-on, so I'll go and show them they're there. I just wanted to guide them through and so they don't get discouraged. Um, when you lose your spouse that you've known, of course we were married over 50 years, and you've lost them, you have to think that there's a reason that you're still here.
Mm.
And even though I beat myself up and said maybe if I was there, I could have done something for him. When he had his heart attack, maybe I could have done something for them, but that wasn't the right time for me. That
Mm.
wasn't the plan for me to be there. And he didn't suffer. So he went right away. He wasn't in the hospital. He would have been the terrible
The
patient in the hospital.
worst, y'all.
Yeah, he'd been on that call light all the time, pulling out things that I'm leaving. And so he wouldn't have made a good, and God knew that. He would not have made a good patient at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I live for to be here and to talk to you all and to guide you through it. It's not easy. It's like a sore that never heals,
Mm.
but it's healing.
Mm.
And so I just want people don't get discouraged and live you only got one life, and live the best that you can. Some people think, it's kind of bougie down here. That's what I thought the word they use.
Okay.
Coming from Kokomo to Westville. That's all right. That's all right. You
I like
know,
bougie.
yeah, it's okay. It's a manageable house. I can actually take care of it. It's not like a all weekend thing, right? And run up, and no has no stairs. We live in a tri level, so there's
Mm.
all kind of different stairs. And I can walk outside and I can join the air. And I've met so many nice people out here. And I don't have to cut the grass. I don't have to shovel snow. So, that's done. And so I can do things that I wanted to do. Um, and it was hard leaving Kokomo. I'm not saying it was easy. It was hard leaving the house that we spent so much time in, and that when we were young, we made it home for our children. Um, and Kokomo will always be my home. When people say where you from, I always say Kokomo. Because
Mm-hmm.
we lived there so long. But don't let other opportunities bypass you as you age, or if you're like me, you lose someone that you love for so many years, you know, just keep moving
Mm-hmm.
because, like I said, each breath, each day is a good day.
Mm. That's so wise. That's so wise. Um, and I think it is true. We have to live our life. We only have the one life. So how do we choose to live it? And you're right. You weren't there because it wasn't your time to be there. We weren't there. I would say just we as a whole, because and y'all were traveling way more than I would be traveling with dad. But we used to do these family trips, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was kind of off that he was by himself on this particular trip. But however, when you talk about what would the after effects be, him being in the hospital, he's a non-compliant patient. He's been, admitted before, and it was never a good situation. It was
Mm-hmm.
always like, very, very crazy. So, seeing that. But then at the same time, he taught us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He taught us a lot on how to make things work, how to be savvy. He was also an entrepreneur, y'all. After he was let go from Delphi Electronics, where he worked, I think, for 19 years, he did flipping homes and cutting grass and, doing things like to make money. And he always had money, okay? Always had
Mm-hmm.
money on him. But he was that type of a person that took control of what he wanted to do. And so that rubbed off on all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's important that people understand, what we've been talking about is really about legacy. Like what are we going to leave behind
Mm-hmm.
after this is all said and done? Because again, we all have a sunset and we all have a sunrise, so
Mm-hmm.
those things are always going to happen. So, my mom is not ashamed to tell how old she is, right?
No, I'm 73.
She is
Um,
73, y'all,
uh-huh.
okay?
Yes.
And she is still moving and grooving out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, do your thing. But I'm all the way here in Maryland. She's there in Indiana. And sometimes I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Where are you going? But the other thing is we get to do it our way. And so I do want to talk about your pronunciation of your name.
Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you, I want to clarify something. When you said your dad was let go, actually he wasn't let go. They closed his plant. So
Mm.
He worked at Delco Electronics, and they actually closed his whole plant. They let
Ah.
everybody, because Mr. Greer was one of them. They let all of them go. So all of them lost their jobs because the
Mm.
GM had some issues. So Deborah. So as Karen and Joanne know, my mother's name was Rosemary, but her middle name was Theodora, and she made that up. I had to find that out. She made her own middle name up. Because I asked grandma, I says, well, where did she get Theodore from? My grandpa's name was Theodore, and her brother's name was Theodore. And she didn't have a middle name because her name was Rosemary. So she made up her own name, a Theodora. So what she so the pronunciation of Deborah, I wanted to be a part of her. So I said Deborah. So I can always remember her.
Okay, first of all right, y'all. Like
My
when
name
my
is
mom said, she says, "No, my name is Deborah." I was like, "Okay." I called Yolanda and I said, "There's something wrong. Something's happening." I think my mom has just flipped the lid. Why is she calling herself? Because for all we've known, it's been Debbie, Deborah, Deb, and then one day she said it's Deborah, and I said, "Really?" And and again, it's been 4 years, and I'm like, "Yes, it's Deborah."
uh-huh.
Okay, because I think that we get to do whatever makes us feel good,
Yes.
whatever you feel like, that is speaking to you. And it's still spelled the same. You're just pronouncing it differently.
And it's no shortcuts. It's no
Mm.
shortcuts. Now, Karen calls me Deb. I think Joanne calls me Deb too. I'm not quite sure. David calls me Debbie. But no one ever calls me Deborah. They never said Deborah. Never, nobody ever called me that. So I said, well, I'm just going to be Deborah, and then they can't put a nickname. So my students can't ever say any of that. They can call me. So everybody out here in this community calls me Deborah. There's no shortcuts. There's no nicknames. It's Deborah.
As you could tell, y'all, my mom and I have like the same type of energy. Okay, it is very unique, and it is whatever we say it is, and so we are honoring my mom, and I'm like, okay, it is Deborah. Okay,
Yes.
Glenroy says the military teaches families how to thrive while living certain dynamics of survival. That's so true. That's absolutely true. So this is, I mean, this conversation has been so good. I mean, we've been on here for an hour and 17 minutes. Usually we are done at the top of the hour, as you know, like most of the shows, but it's because it's Mother's Day, and so we can spend a little bit more time here. So what else would you like to share with us, Mom?
Uh, I don't know. I think you know. I think you know everything about me now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to teach this summer. I'm going to come out and see Andrew. I'm still teaching. I would like to this is my big plan is I would like to teach people how to dye yarn, and but I want to spin yarn too. So I was talking to Karen about that. I'd like to get some spinning yarn and kind of do like that. I like starting my own little businesses, and maybe teach some people how to do that. Um, I plan on working until I get up one day and says I'm not doing it. So when people say, well, when are you going to retire? Whenever I get at that one day and I says I'm not going in.
Yeah.
So I don't know when that's going to be. So
And guess what? I think that's beautiful. I think that's good. I mean, you're able to sustain this long. And y'all, she worked through COVID, which was absolutely nerve wracking as a respiratory therapist.
oh
And I was like,
yes, oh
why are we
yes.
working on the respiratory floor when we know that there are COVID patients in there? Like, does that really make sense, Ma? And it was because you're very passionate about what you do and you enjoy what you do. So why not do it, right?
Hmm. And
So,
did not get COVID one
and
time.
you did not get COVID.
Mm-mm.
So
Yeah.
that was meant, for you to be there. But I agree. I think we should be working and doing things that we really absolutely enjoy. And you do like starting businesses and
Hmm.
being creative. And I do know that's where I got a lot of my creativity from as well. We can start things. We could just be like, oh no, we think of this and we start doing it, and that's okay because I think, the more that we do that, the more that we discover more about ourselves. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Okay, so I do have a question. My last question. All right, so we've got Glenroy said, she just said that she's going to keep on slaying until she can't slay no more, literally. Yes, she did. That's what we're doing. And
Hmm.
Cherise says, Happy Mother's Day to both of you queens. Happy Mother's Day to you too, Cherise. Love that you are
Thank
here with
you.
us live. Okay, so you got a few more years, you're right, till you get to the big 80.
Hmm.
And on the show, I ask every guest, about what you would love for your family and friends to say about you if God gives you your 80th birthday. So, with all of what you have been through, all that you're doing, what would that be for you? What do you want them to say?
That I did not give up.
Oh,
This easy. I did not give up.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of women that have lost their husbands and they have just gave up and they're
Mm.
gone in the next year or
Mm.
6 months. There is a syndrome. There's a syndrome, and I forget what that syndrome is. That they die within a year after their spouses, especially if you've been married as long as Sugar and I were. Um, but you gotta go on to live. You have to live.
Mm.
So that's what I want people to know. Hmm. And I have some people in our family. We have some people in our family that have lost their spouses. My Aunt Sarah lost her husband. I don't know how many years ago Uncle Jack's gone. I don't know. Karen and Joanne probably would know that. And she's like in her late 80s and she's kept raising those 5 kids. I have
Mm.
an Aunt Flo that's almost 100 years old that's out in Reno, Nevada. And her husband died, I don't know, maybe 40 years ago. But she
Mm.
keeps going.
Yeah. That is so good when you can say, I'm just going to keep going on. Because you're right. We know the statistics. We've seen it before, where they just, give up and they just stay in the house or they just shut themselves off to the world and they just stop living because they just don't think they can do it without the other person. So, and even Glenroy, he's just put this: the depth and breadth of that statement, she did not give up, covers a multitude of life dynamics, a multitude. And I think too, we're not going to allow you to give up. And I think that's the other thing, because if you say to us, oh, I'm not doing this, or I'm not sure, whatever. I know for me, I'm getting on the first thing smoking. I don't even know, y'all. I don't even listen. I'll make that plane trip. Like, you tell me if you're, oh, I don't know. That's not quite sure. I then know it that we need to have a conversation. But I
Mhm.
don't see that happening because of what you have demonstrated over the past few years. And even though, I can be in my feelings like mom is out here, driving there, doing this, doing that, at least I know you're doing.
Mhm.
Okay. And I at least know that you are being, so that's good for all of us to hear and know. So
But I know my limits. I
mm-hmm.
know, if it's storming or raining out there, I'm not making that trip to Kokomo.
No.
If it's snow and ice, I'm not doing that. At night, I only go places that I know because of my
Mm,
glaucoma,
yeah.
in my eyes. So there are limits, and you have to know your limits too,
Mm,
and be reasonable about that.
yeah. I think that's important to know too. Yeah,
Hmm.
because you can be out there. And again, y'all don't know. My mom and I have had conversations um about where she would live and what would be her future. We've had conversations. I'm like, I'm close to putting in some monitors, just to kind of see, but I haven't gone that far just yet. But every time we're like, wait a minute, because I'm all about my mom. Okay, so I don't know what's going on. Then I have to be in the know.
Okay.
Anyway, so I want to just say thank you, Mom, for being here as a guest on the show. We're going to close it up. And I also want to thank our guests because we had a lot of guests tonight. We had, of course, Yolanda. We had Audra Russell, Leslie, Maritza, Joyce, Veronica, Chevy, Aunt Joanne. We had Glenroy, Latrice, Veronica, Uncle Theotis, Aunt Karen, Jonathan, goodness, Jennifer. Oh, Jennifer, I forgot to say thank you for being here on the show, Jennifer. And we also had Donnell, Cherise. So we had a lot of people who came by to visit. and just to listen in on a conversation. So, y'all, this has been a great show. This was a special episode with my mom, Deborah King. And she is just, she is, she, okay, Glenroy says, if her being consists of her doing within reason, her light will continue to be a driving force for you all as her family and to those immediately around her. You're an awesome person, ma'am. What does that mean? Oh, keep on slaying until you can't slay no more.
Oh, I like that acronym. Wow, you need to put that on plaque.
I know, like Glenroy. So listen, I'm going to take that as an our hashtag. Okay, so thank you for sharing that with us and being here with us tonight. All right, y'all. So we are going to leave y'all. Hopefully, y'all did right by your mothers. If those that still have your mothers that are still here, for those that aren't, we praying for your continued comfort and peace, because I know that it could be a difficult thing to go through on this special day. And you make sure these kids, okay, whoever these kids are that you have, make sure they understand that today is Mother's Day. Okay. And they should have had already got the gifts and all the other things. AJ and Dominique were trying to play with me, and I was like, don't play with me. Okay. Today is my day. So I didn't do laundry. I didn't cook. I didn't do anything. I did whatever I want to do, which was walk around in the neighborhood for about an hour and
Oh, good for
eat
you.
some great food and then be about my business. So,
Mhm.
okay. All right, y'all. So we'll be back here not next weekend, but the weekend after that. All right. So look out for the advertisement for that. And as you all know, we're going to keep on slaying until you can't slay no more. And Yolanda said, thank you, Rochelle and Mom, for being my superhero. I love you both
Aw.
so much. She's so
Oh,
sappy. She
she
always puts all
is.
the stuff on there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yolanda.
Uh, well, thank you all for coming to Westville and being with me.
Y'all visited Westville,
Yeah,
Indiana.
y'all.
If you haven't been there before, now you can put that on your list that you've been there, okay?
Yes,
Small town too, y'all. So I'm just gonna tell you
it is.
that. Okay. All right. We'll see you. Bye bye.
Bye.